This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The
Taliban movement in Afghanistan announced that it has completed preparations for what it called a spring offensive, which NATO forces have warned against all along. In an interview with Al Jazeera in southern Afghanistan, Taliban's military commander, Mullah Dadullah, said that more than 6,000 fighters have been deployed and are awaiting further instructions from their commanders to launch the offensive.
Taliban fighters in Afghanistan are racing against time as the movement is moving closer to launching its spring offensive, which the NATO forces have warned against all along. The Taliban has deployed, trained, and prepared more than 6,000 fighters for an imminent attack in the spring. Taliban fighters are vigilant and always on the move, especially during nighttime away from surveillance. The Taliban will launch a wide-scale offensive in Afghanistan, especially the southern region, where it will try to seize total control over major cities in the area.
The
number of mujahideen willing to take part in the offensive has reached 6,000, and it may increase to 10,000. As more Jews and Christian soldiers join NATO forces, more Afghan people are encouraged to join us.
Without going into detail, the Taliban said that it has acquired anti-aircraft weapons. To prove its case, the Taliban has presented a videotape to Al Jazeera television showing the wreckage of a burning United States helicopter that was shot down in Kandahar nearly 2 months ago. Meanwhile, accusation and blame intensified between the Afghan government and NATO forces from one side and Pakistan from the other side. This news comes in the aftermath of a statement issued by the governor of Pakistan's northwestern region.
So, with the passage of time, their strength has been swelling.
With the passage of time, Taliban's strength has been increasing. The Taliban has been gaining momentum among the local residents. This news has helped transform the Taliban from a national resistance movement to a war of liberation movement against the NATO forces.
The Taliban believe that the mistakes committed by the NATO forces worked to their advantage, enabling them to deploy and build up their fighter units in preparation for the upcoming spring offensive. In a speech to the British House of Commons, Prime Minister Tony Blair announced his determination to reduce the number of British forces in Iraq from 7,000 to 5,500 troops by 2008. Blair said that the remaining troops will train Iraqi forces, indicating that this reduction was based on many studies made on the security needs of the city of Basra.
The next chapter in Basra's history can be written by the Iraqis. I have discussed this with Prime Minister Maliki, and our proposals have his full support and indeed represent his wishes. Already we have handed over prime responsibility for security to the Iraqi authorities in Al-Muthana and Dikar. The actual reduction in forces will be from the present 7,100 down from over 9,000 2 years ago and 40,000 at the time of the conflict to roughly 5,500, however with the exception of forces which will remain at Basra Palace.
For his part, the Danish Prime Minister, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, announced today that Denmark, one of the closest allies of the United States, will withdraw all its troops from Iraq by next August. During a press conference, he said that a helicopter team will replace a Danish contingent which will be withdrawn. He added that this decision was made in consultation with allies in the coalition, including Britain. The American response to Blair's step comes from the United United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in Berlin. She said that the coalition in Iraq remains intact. Meanwhile, United States Vice President Dick Cheney said that the United States wants to complete its mission in Iraq and then come home with honor, despite the unpopularity of the war domestically and doubts about this mission by Washington's allies. Cheney's visit to Tokyo comes several weeks after the Japanese defense minister stated that the war on Iraq was a mistake, and Japan's foreign minister said that he views the American occupation's policy as immature. After these statements, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe hastened to reassure Washington that Tokyo's support for its policy in Iraq has not changed. After the two British and Danish steps, the United States continues to have the largest military presence in Iraq. The number of troops which were deployed into Iraq after the invasion was comprised of nearly 140,000 American soldiers and 16,000 soldiers from 27 other countries.
The Australian Prime Minister did not join Britain in reducing the number of its troops in Iraq.
Have been aware for some time.
I understand it is a reduction from 7,000 to about 5,200. That will still leave British forces in southern Iraq 10 times the Australian force. A reduction has been in the wind, and the reason I understand Mr. Blair will give is that conditions have stabilized in Basra.
الحرب على العراق في العام 2003 استطاعت الولايات المتحدة أن تشكل ما سمته تحالفا دوليا قال وزير الدفاع الأمريكي السابق دونالد رامسفيلد.
Since war was declared on Iraq in 2003, the U.S. has been able to form what it calls an international coalition. Less than a year ago, the former U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said that the coalition was made up of 34 countries. However, other American officials have said that the number of countries is actually 27. In 2004, the nations that withdrew from the coalition included Nicaragua, Spain, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, the Philippines, Thailand, New Zealand, and Tonga. In 2005, Hungary, whose forces participated in training NATO forces, also withdrew, as well as Portugal, Norway, Ukraine, Holland, and Singapore, which sent some soldiers on a ship that docked in the Gulf Sea. Japan and Italy withdrew their forces last year. Slovakia followed suit at the end of last month. Denmark announced that it will withdraw its 460 troops by next August. South Korea announced that it intends to withdraw 1,000 of its troops, leaving 2,300 soldiers in Iraq. Poland has debated ending its presence of 900 soldiers in Iraq by the end of this year. The United States remains the largest contingent in Iraq with more than 130,000 troops. Britain retains the second spot, then South Korea and Australia. The remaining countries make up less than 500 soldiers. Some of them contribute less than 100 soldiers, the least of which is Moldova, which has deployed only 12 troops.
عناصر مولدوفا الذين يشكلون 12 عنصرا فقط. ميساء أقبيق العربية.
Palestinians from all sects of society staged a sit-in in Jerusalem, protesting a ruling by an Israeli magistrate court banning Raed Salah, the head of Islamic movement in Israel, from visiting Al-Aqsa Mosque. The ruling came in the aftermath of a protest which Salah took part in against the digging by the occupation authority near the Moroccan gate that leads to Al-Aqsa Mosque.
We came out here today to reject, protest, and condemn the unjust, unethical, and inhumane measures that were taken against Raed Salah, who was banned from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is just a few meters away from here. They talk about freedom and human rights and so on, and yet they prevent people from visiting their holy shrines.
Undercover security agents killed a senior Islamic Jihad terrorist in Janine this morning, just hours after police thwarted a plot that the terrorist masterminded to explode a large bomb at the central bus station in Tel Aviv last night. Mahmoud Abu Abed, a Jihad commander in the Janine area, had prepared the bomb that was to be used for the operation. Information attained from the would-be bomber, who was arrested last night, led to the targeting of Abu Abed. IBA's Eli Wagalanter has that story.
Against terrorism was swift. Witnesses said Mahmoud Abu Abed was driving his white Subaru in Janine when undercover troops tried to arrest him. Abu Abed pulled out a semi-automatic M16 rifle and fired at the officers, who then sprayed his vehicle with bullets. Abu Abed had been high on the wanted list for more than 2 years for his involvement in dozens of bombing attacks against army units. His targeted killing followed a tense evening last night in the central region. Police ordered Tel Aviv, Holon, Bat Yam, and Rishon LeZion moved to high alert after receiving an intelligence warning that a suicide bomber had possibly infiltrated the region. After a 2-hour operation in which security forces set up roadblocks and threw a dragnet around the area, officers found the bomber that Abu Abed had recruited for the operation. 24-year-old Omar Abu Rad, a resident of the village of Jilabun, located near Kibbutz Ma'ale Gilboa, was arrested together with 3 other terror cell members in an apartment in Bat Yam. Abu Rad confessed to the planned attack, and the group led officers to a dumpster in Rishon LeZion, where they had stashed their explosives after wandering around the Dan area earlier in the day. Sappers later detonated the bomb in a controlled explosion just after midnight. Islamic Jihad, which has refused to participate in the temporary Palestinian ceasefire, claimed responsibility for last night's attempted terror attack. It also vowed to retaliate for the killing of Abu Abed, known for producing high-quality explosives. He was gunned down this morning in Yahya Ayash Square, a site named for the Hamas mastermind bomber known as the Engineer, was himself known for producing high-quality explosives. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
Representatives of the quartet are meeting in Berlin today to discuss ways of reviving the stalled Middle East peace process in the face of a newly formed Palestinian unity government. Foreign ministers from the European Union, the United States, Russia, and the UN are attempting to work out differences over how to deal with the new Palestinian coalition. Ahead of the meeting, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov urged Israel and the Palestinians to hold talks over the political horizon of a future Palestinian state. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier welcomed his counterparts, including U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Ki-moon spoke at a press conference ahead of the meeting.
We will first be able to analyze the situation of Mecca deal as well as a trilateral meeting. We hope to be briefed by Secretary Rice about her meeting with the Palestinian and Israeli leaders. All this process may be very sensitive and may be very difficult because of very complex nature of the situation. However, at this time, it would be crucially important for international community to encourage this Mecca deal and these ongoing diplomatic initiatives in the Middle East.
For his part, Prime Minister Olmert stressed the importance of continuing U.S. efforts to bring both sides together. Olmert spoke a short time ago with members of the foreign press.
It was clear that Israel will not be able to maintain any kind of formal or practical contact with a government that will not accept explicitly the principles of the quartet. That was said by us, that was said by the Americans, that was said by the quartet members on the 2nd of February, and immediately following the announcement of the agreement, it was said again by all the quartet members, and I believe that it will be repeated today at the conclusion of the meeting of the quartet members in Europe.
المستوطنون اليهود في الضفة الغربية عبارة عن
Jewish settlers in the West Bank create a problem that can't be resolved. For many years, they convince themselves that their presence protects the Jewish identity of the land that they are in, even inside the Palestinian state, which they do not recognize. A father of a Palestinian family continues to be patient and steadfast in the face of the settlers, who have surrounded his home from all sides and used various means to expel him or take over his house. The story seems typical of what Palestinians face, but it still reflects a bitter reality that coexistence is impossible between Jews and the Palestinians amidst racism, robbery, and denying the rights of the indigenous people.
كشوكة استقرت في حلق الاستيطان يبدو منزل صبري غريب أبو سمير صامدا وسط
Since 1978, the home of Sabri Gharib Abu Samir has remained steadfast in the center of Jafat Hijha settlement, northwest of Jerusalem, like a thorn in the throat of Jewish settlers. The place looks like a detention center. Israel confiscated 40,000 square feet of Abu Samir's land next to his home in order to expand the settlement. A fence was erected around the home, which will become an electric fence after the Israeli separation wall is finished being built. The only link between the home and the Beit Ijza village, which it belongs to, is this small wooden bridge.
Early in 1979, they put up the fence around the house and around the land. They took 40 dunams and began building 360 single-family homes. They cut off the streets. They are here, as you see.
داخل المنزل يعيش أبو سمير وزوجته وأبناؤه.
Abu Samir bitterly lives with his wife and children, 11 people, inside the home. The settlers frequently try to hurt them. However, this family has not forgotten what happened to them in 1988, when the first intifada began and when settlers shot at one of them.
مستوطنون النار على أحد أفرادها.
They throw stones at us and then accuse us of throwing stones at them. The exact opposite. They throw stones and accuse us. They provoke us. So that even if you have a little desire to remain here, they make you want to escape and leave. But I will never leave. I swore to God that I will not leave this home except when I die.
الجدار الفاصل طالما أرق عائلة.
The separation wall has distressed Abu Samir's family. The Israeli authorities tried to reassure the family, informing it that a small door will be built into the wall so they can keep in touch with the village. Abu Samir understands that this situation will transform his home to an open-air prison. But he is not afraid because he made a decision a long time ago to hold on tight to his land until the end.
منذ زمن بعيد التشبث بأرضه حتى النهاية.
In Syria, Palestinian opposition factions have rejected U.S. and Israeli conditions for the formation of a Palestinian National Unity Government. Meanwhile, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, said that it will not participate in a coalition government and strongly rejects one of the conditions calling on Palestinians to honor previous agreements with Israel.
أعلنت فصائل المقاومة الفلسطينية العشرة رفضها للاشتراطات التي أعلنتها وزيرة الخارجية الأمريكية كونداليزا رايس ورئيس الحكومة الإسرائيلية أيهود أولمرت حول البرنامج السياسي للحكومة الفلسطينية المقبلة، فيما اعتذرت الجبهة الشعبية لتحرير فلسطين رسميا عن المشاركة في تلك الحكومة لأسباب مبدئية تتعلق بتضمن كتاب التكليف احترام الاتفاقات الموقعة مع الإسرائيليين.
The head of the PFLP political office in exile, Maher al-Tahir, said that his faction rejects a U.S. condition which calls on Palestinians to honor previous peace agreements between Israel and the PLO.
We will not take part in a national unity government because we do not honor previous agreements between Israel and the PLO. Such agreements call for recognizing Israel.
الموقعة بين قيادة منظمة التحرير وإسرائيل والتي تتضمن اعتراف بحق إسرائيل في الوجود.
Meanwhile, the Hamas-led government called on all Palestinian factions to do their best to honor the Mecca agreement. This news comes amidst mounting pressures on the Palestinian National Authority to turn down a bid for a partnership with the Islamic resistance movement, which praised President Mahmoud Abbas's efforts for not bowing down.
We must protect the Mecca agreement from foreign intervention. Since we signed this agreement, international pressures have intensified on the Palestinian Authority and its President Abu Mazen. We hereby declare that we will do everything in our power to honor the Mecca agreement.
Meanwhile, the 10 opposition factions called on the Palestinian people to continue the resistance and renounce the policy of concessions, which has been fruitless.
The U.S. wants to get more and more concessions from the Palestinian people. I firmly believe that the three-way meeting between Abbas, Rice, and Olmert in Jerusalem did not produce anything positive for the Palestinian people.
During a press conference, the PFLP welcomed clauses of the Mecca Agreement which have successfully put an end to the internal fighting between rival Palestinian factions. The PFLP called for the reconstruction of all Palestinian security agencies and the reactivation of the PLO. Preserving the Mecca Agreement seems to be the top agenda of the Palestinian factions, despite the reservations from the PFLP. In order for the Palestinians to be able to counter the U.S. pressures, they need to strengthen their national unity and put their internal differences aside. During the past 2 months, heinous clashes broke out between rival factions in the Palestinian territories.
A week after the double bus bombing near Bikfaya, the army sappers defused a bomb hidden in a wheel in Bir Hassan at the entrance of the southern Beirut suburb. An army statement said the bomb, which was discovered after a scrap metal dealer, Jihad, brought the wheel to a shop near Beirut's airport road, contained 1.2 kilograms of TNT explosives and was equipped with a timing device. The Internal Security Services blocked the sector while the army announced that a specialist unit defused the bomb. The statement did not say where the dealer found the wheel. An investigation is underway. The Syrian Navy has shot and killed a Lebanese fisherman as he sailed by boat in Syrian territorial waters. The head of Fishermen's Union said yesterday that the Syrian Navy opened fire on the boat, killing 20-year-old Dieb Ahmad Wiza. Fuad Talib said his 15-year-old brother Nimr, who was on the boat with him, was wounded. The national news agency reported that the Lebanese Navy towed the boat to the northern port of Tripoli. According to the news agency, an investigation was underway. Talib told AFP that the two were fishermen who sometimes smuggled cigarettes between Lebanon and his former power broker, Syria. Lebanese police did not wish to comment on the incident. The United Arab Emirates on Tuesday signed a $300 million soft loan agreement with Lebanon, the first batch of billions of dollars of international aid to help revive the country's ailing economy. Finance Minister Jihad Al-Zaoud said the 20-year-old soft loan will have an interest rate of 2.5% and a grace period of 5 years. He said the sum will be used to help decrease public debt. The UAE loan was granted to Lebanon through the Abu Dhabi Development Fund. Lebanon secured pledges for over $7.6 billion from international donors at a conference in Paris last month. It has a huge public debt which ballooned to $41 billion, more than 180% of gross domestic product, after Israel's summer war. Prime Minister Fuad Senura's administration has mapped out a 5-year economic reform plan that includes a 2% rise in value-added tax to 12% as of 2008 and privatizing the electricity and mobile phone sectors.
UN peacekeeping forces in southern Lebanon documented an Israeli violation to UN Security Council Resolution 1701. They confirmed that Israeli warplanes have repeatedly flown at low altitude over large areas of the Bekaa Valley and Sidon. Meanwhile, Lebanese citizens said that what had happened between the UNIFIL forces deployed on the outskirts of villages and local youth was a minor misunderstanding, where some young men had thrown stones at these forces. Our reporter Alia Ibrahim visited the villages of Dabin and Maroun al-Ras in South Lebanon and surveyed the people's opinions.
Last Saturday, some misunderstanding happened between Lebanese youth and a Spanish UNIFIL unit. Young men had thrown stones at the Spanish patrol unit, forcing the Lebanese army to intervene by arresting some young men from the nearby village of Dabin. Hussein, Ali, and Hassan, who had witnessed what happened, say that the individuals who threw the stones were not from the area.
We didn't do it. Some troublemakers did it because they want to create problems between the Shiites and the Spanish forces. All the young men here have been instructed not to interact with the UNIFIL forces except within the law.
Instructions not to interfere with the UNIFIL forces have created somewhat positive relations between these forces and local residents. Ali, Hassan, and Hussein are attending a Spanish class taught by the Spanish UNIFIL forces. They say that learning a new language is good, and they have been making efforts not to miss their classes.
Meanwhile, the city of Maron al-Ras expelled some members from the French contingent who came to survey local residents.
We have no problems whatsoever. The mayor only told the employees serving in the French contingent of the UNIFIL that they should coordinate with the municipality before doing anything. They just can't bypass the municipality.
The UNIFIL forces said that what happened was caused by a misunderstanding over timing. However, local residents have mixed views. Mohammed and Hassan are two friends, but they differ on this.
Some people are angry at the French because they keep going back and forth even during the night. They do not let us sleep. Why do they keep coming here?
They are not bad. They are good and they play a very positive role.
What happened in Maron and Dabin during the past few days happens all the time and in areas where the UNIFIL forces have been deployed. The misunderstandings that took place between the UNIFIL and local residents are normal, especially when considering the situation that led these forces to be deployed in southern Lebanon. The real concern, however, is that the UNIFIL forces might be targeted by military operations.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says the bullying powers who are against the country's access to peaceful nuclear technology should apologize to the Iranian nation for their past behavior. Addressing a large gathering of people in Astana Ashrafieh, northern province of Iran, President Ahmadinejad added, Iran considers nuclear right as established and no one is authorized to trample the legitimate rights of the Iranian nation. Earlier in the day, President Ahmadinejad told a huge crowd of people in Langarud that Iran is making headway towards progress to the dismay of the bullying powers. He went on to say Iran will take no heed of the bullying powers, which have opted for exerting pressure on Iran rather than holding negotiations to reach an understanding. Still, earlier in the day, the Iranian president told the residents of Siakal city, north of the country, access to the full nuclear fuel cycle will push ahead the Iranian nation by 50 years. The president added the significance of the nuclear issue could be understood from the opposition raised by the bullying powers. Ankara voices support for Iran's peaceful nuclear work and hopes to see a negotiated settlement to the standoff over Tehran's nuclear case. Turkish President Ahmetnejad Sezer told the visiting Iranian Foreign Minister Mevlut Mottaki that Iran-Turkey relations have been considerable progress in recent years. The Iranian top diplomat also stated that the two sides target to enhance the volume of bilateral trade up to $10 billion in the year 2007. Earlier in the day, the Iranian foreign minister called on the international community to deal fairly with Iran's peaceful nuclear program. Mottaki told a joint press conference with his Turkish counterpart Abdullah Gül that Tehran rules out the notion that some countries should possess nuclear weapons while others should be deprived of civilian nuclear energy. Mottaki went on to say there has been no report to substantiate that the country's nuclear activities are for non-peaceful purposes. U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice urged Iran on Wednesday to suspend uranium enrichment activities as a precondition for resumption of nuclear negotiations with the West. Raising similar calls, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, meanwhile, emphasized that Iran's nuclear case can be settled only through negotiations. Earlier in the day, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reiterated that the technical views of the International Atomic Energy Agency should be considered as a foundation for solving Iran's nuclear issue.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.